White billionaire family laughs at black CEO's mom. Then he cancels $900 million deal. Malik Evans built his company from the ground up, first warehouse, first truck, first payroll check, written from a borrowed desk in a shared office. But today wasn't about beginnings. Today was supposed to mark the next chapter. His logistics firm, Southroot Solutions, was hours away from signing a landmark $900 million merger with the Rothschild Group, an old money dynasty that had operated quietly in the shadows of global commerce for over a century. Malik had invited only one guest to the celebration: his mother, Ruth Evans. Ruth stepped out of the black sedan with care. She wore a pearl-toned blazer, a matching skirt, and a soft pink hat perched gently atop her silver hair. She didn't carry designer labels, but everything about her spoke of pride and intention. She clutched her bag close as she climbed the stone steps leading to the Essex Grove Club, a private venue reserved for the elite of the East Coast business world. As she approached the entrance, a woman in a navy blue suit with a gold badge pinned to her lapel stepped directly into her path. "Excuse me," the staffer said, brows slightly furrowed. "Deliveries and catering come around back." Ruth paused. "I'm here for lunch. With my son." The woman didn't budge. "Ma'am, policy requires staff to use the rear entrance." "I'm not staff," Ruth said, voice calm. "My name is Ruth Evans. My son is Malik Evans. He's the CEO." Before the woman could respond, another voice cut across the courtyard like a blade. "Well, I suppose we're letting anyone in these days," said Veronica Rothschild, descending from the club entrance with a wine glass in hand. She was dressed in ivory pearls, weighing heavily around her neck, every inch the embodiment of inherited privilege. "Are we dining with the help?" "Now." A few people nearby chuckled. Someone whispered something about classic Veronica. Ruth's jaw tensed, but she held her head high. Malik, standing just inside the atrium of the club, had been mid-toast when he saw it happen. Through the glass windows, he caught the moment his mother stopped the staffer blocking her, and Veronica's words delivered with the casual cruelty of someone who never expected consequences. He set down his champagne flute. His business partner Lionel noticed the change in his expression. "Everything all right?" Malik didn't answer. He walked out of the room without a word across the patio and down the steps toward his mother. Ruth turned to him with a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Baby, I don't want to cause a fuss." He looked at the staffer, then at Veronica, who had already turned her back. "You're not causing a fuss," he said. "You're the reason I'm here." He offered his arm to Ruth, opened the door to the sedan himself, and helped her in with steady hands. She touched his wrist before he closed the door. "Don't ruin your moment over me." He met her eyes. "You are the moment." Then he shut the door and turned back toward the building. Inside, the guests had begun seating themselves at a long table adorned with white orchids and place cards. The Rothschilds sat at the center. A champagne tower glittered by the windows. Legal teams hovered near folders stacked in front of every seat. Everything was ready for the merger. All that remained was Malik's signature. He didn't return to his assigned chair. Instead, he stood just beside it, placing his hands on its back. "I want to say something," he said. The room quieted slowly. A few heads turned. Lionel stiffened. "You all know what this deal means. Not just for Southroot, not just for the Rothschilds, but for the next generation of American infrastructure. We've spent 2 years building to this moment." He looked around the room. Then finally, his eyes settled on Veronica, who was sipping from her glass legs, crossed unfazed. "I'm not signing." It was said plainly, like a statement of fact. The room froze. Veronica's glass halted mid-sip. "Excuse me," she said, a touch of laughter behind her voice. "No deal," Malik said again. "You insulted the woman who gave me everything. You did it in public. And you didn't blink." "Let's not overreact to a misunderstanding," Veronica replied, her tone smooth. "I didn't recognize her. That's all." "You recognized exactly what you thought she was," he said. "And that was enough for you to disrespect her." Malik Lionel started standing. "Let's talk. Privately. Just step outside for a minute." "No." Malik looked around once more. "If silence is the cost of this deal, I'm not paying it." He turned and walked out again. The boardroom stayed quiet. The folder with the $900 million agreement sat untouched on the table. The merger died before the ink touched the page. Outside, Ruth watched from the car window as her son emerged from the building jacket over his arm face, unreadable. He opened the door and got in. "Did you sign no?" She didn't smile. She didn't cry. She reached over and took his hand. Then, "Let's go home." The drive back to the city was quiet. Malik kept his eyes on the road while Ruth sat beside him, staring out the window, her fingers gently laced in her lap. She didn't ask for explanations. She didn't need them. Her silence wasn't disapproval, it was understanding. The kind that only came from surviving decades of being overlooked, underestimated, and dismissed. "You didn't have to do that," she finally said. "I know," Malik replied, eyes still on the highway. "But I had to." By the time they reached Ruth's apartment in Newark, Malik's phone had already begun vibrating nonstop. Missed calls from Lionel, from PR, from their legal team. Texts poured in. Articles were already going live. Someone at the luncheon must have leaked what happened. He helped Ruth to her door, hugged her longer than usual, and headed back toward the car. The sun was starting to dip behind the low skyline. His mother had been right. It wasn't about ruining a moment. It was about preserving something much more important. By the time he arrived at his office in Manhattan that evening, the fallout had begun. The lobby receptionist looked startled to see him. "Mr. Evans," she said cautiously. "Reporters were just here looking for you." "I figured they might be." He took the elevator to the top floor, where the boardroom lights were still on. Lionel was already inside with two other executives, Olivia Chen, head of communications, and CFO Jared Liu. The tension was immediate. "You know you blew up 2 years of work in a single sentence, right?" Lionel said, arms crossed, pacing the room. Malik took a seat slowly. "I didn't blow it up. They did the moment they disrespected my mother in front of half the finance world." "That's not the point," Jared interjected. "The point is perception. Market analysts are already reacting. Investors want answers." "They'll get them," Malik said. "From who? Forbes, Bloomberg, TikTok," Lionel snapped. "You think principles pay the bills, bro?" "No. But silence doesn't build anything either." Olivia had been quiet up to this point. She leaned forward. "I think we need to get ahead of this. Whatever we say next becomes the narrative." "We don't spin," this Malik said firmly. "We tell the truth." Jared sighed. "You walked away from a $900 million merger, Malik. That's not just a headline. That's a crisis. Then, let it be." Malik replied, "But I'm not backing down." The following morning, the story had caught fire. The first headline came from a mid-sized business outlet. Black CEO walks away from $900 million deal after mother was mistaken for staff by Rothschild matriarch. Within hours, it was trending on every major social platform. Respect over revenue. Evans walked, genre legacy first. Olivia had warned that once you became a symbol, the world would never look at you the same. Malik knew that, but he also knew what it meant to stay silent. He'd seen what happened when people swallowed disrespect to protect access. He wasn't interested in being let in. He was interested in building something people couldn't shut down. A hastily scheduled Rothschild press release came out late that afternoon, full of vague regret and polished deflection. "We regret the unfortunate misunderstanding and remain committed to inclusion and mutual respect in all our endeavors." It landed like a brick. Commentators called it toothless. Editorials labeled it cold. One even said, "You don't accidentally insult a man's mother and expect to keep your empire intact." Back at Southroot's Manhattan office, Malik sat with Olivia and Jared again. This time, they weren't yelling. "We need to brace," Jared said. "Hathaway Legal just sent over a draft of a breach claim. They're building the case that you walked away for personal reasons in violation of contractual obligations. They think this'll make me fold, Malik asked. They think you embarrassed them, Olivia said, and that means they'll play dirty. Malik leaned back in his chair. Let them try. That night, he received an anonymous call from an unlisted number. They're going to try to ruin you, the voice said. It was a man older measured. I worked on their acquisition team for over a decade. You're not the first name they've tried to erase when it didn't suit them. Why tell me now? Because you embarrassed them in public. And that means they'll come at you in private. You need to be ready. The line went dead. Malik sat in the dark for a long time after that, watching the lights of the city flicker below. He thought about Ruth. He thought about the quiet strength she carried. How many rooms she had walked into where people assumed she didn't belong. How many times she had smiled anyway. He thought about the moment she stood outside Essex Grove looking both hurt and regal. He wouldn't let anyone erase that. The next day, he told Olivia, "We're going to show people who we are before they tell the world who we're not." She nodded. Then we need real voices, not paid ads, not statements. People who know you, people you've helped, people who will speak because they believe, not because we ask them to. Within 24 hours, a campaign began to take shape. Warehouse supervisors sent in testimonials. Former interns stitched together TikTok videos about Malik's mentorship. A retired truck driver posted a shaky cell phone clip. "Malik came down to the depot when my wife was sick and drove my route himself. I'll never forget that." And then there was Ruth. She appeared in a single-minute video sitting in her modest living room, hands folded. "I didn't ask for attention," she said simply. "But I raised my son not to keep his head down when someone steps on his name." It was quiet, unscripted, and devastatingly honest. The clip went viral. Suddenly, Malik wasn't just the CEO who walked away from a deal. He was the man who said no and meant it. And that, as it turned out, scared the Rothschilds more than any lawsuit could. The clip of Ruth Evans speaking had reshaped everything. No press team, no multi-million-dollar branding push, just an elderly woman in a quiet room stating the truth as she had lived it. That 1 minute, unpolished and uncoached, cracked the Rothschilds' veneer wider than any headline. It flooded comment sections, stitched its way across TikTok, and was reposted with captions like, "This is legacy." By the time Malik arrived at the office the next morning, the tone of the conversation had shifted, not from support to silence, but from silence to momentum. But momentum was pressure, and pressure always found its way inward. Upstairs, the conference room was already full. Lionel stood at the glass wall, arms crossed. Olivia had 2 laptops open. Jared sat at the table, flipping through a folder of legal correspondence, face tight. "They're coming full speed now," Jared said without looking up. "Rothschild's attorneys sent a formal notice this morning, accusing you of breaching goodwill clauses and sabotaging shareholder value. They're trying to make this emotional," Lionel added. "Frame it like you let personal feelings override business logic." Malik took a slow breath. "It was never just personal." "Try explaining that to investors," Jared said. "Because they're calling. Constantly." Olivia pulled up a dashboard on her screen. "Some are spooked. We lost a private equity group in Chicago." But she tapped the screen again. 3 mid-sized logistics firms reached out quietly. "They're interested in talks." "Because of the story?" Malik asked. "Because you didn't fold," she replied. "Because you made a decision most of them would never dare make." Lionel didn't look convinced. "And how long until that goodwill turns sour?" "You've become a symbol, Malik. And symbols don't get to screw up. I'm not trying to be one. You are one." Lionel snapped. "You're the man who turned down $900 million because someone insulted his mom. That's how people see you now. That's your brand, whether you like it or not." "I didn't do it for brand." "No," Lionel said, "you did it for honor. But now, honor has consequences." Malik stood and walked to the window, watching the traffic on Market Street below. Trucks moved like blood through veins. His trucks, his routes. Everything South Route had built came from those wheels. Not Rothschild money. Not a silver spoon. They're watching. I know, Malik said quietly. But I won't teach people that power means swallowing everything. The room fell silent. Jared tapped his pen once then again. And if this tanks us, then we rebuild, Malik said. At least we don't rot from the inside. No one spoke for a while. Then Olivia nodded slowly. Jared exhaled, muttered something under his breath, and Lionel, after a long pause, shrugged. We'll hold, he said. For now. That same afternoon, Malik received a message on his internal server. A letter. Brief, handwritten, scanned and forwarded by one of his assistants, who thought it might be important. It came from Elise Martin, a fourth-grade teacher in Pennsylvania. Mr. Evans, you don't know me, but I know who you are. My father worked as a groundskeeper for the Rothschild family from 1982 to 2007. I watched him wear that uniform proudly, even when people never bothered to learn his name. I saw your story. I cried, not because I was shocked, but because for once, someone said no and meant it. You reminded me of him. Thank you. With respect, Elise Martin. It was short, simple. Malik printed it out and tucked it in his wallet. He didn't tell anyone at first, not Olivia, not even Ruth. But 2 days later, he stood outside a small apartment complex in Harrisburg, holding a paper bag from a local bakery. When Elise opened the door, she froze, then blinked. You're Malik, he said. And this is banana bread. She laughed lightly and stepped aside. Inside the space was small, but warm. On the mantel sat a framed photo of a man in work boots, standing under a tree rake, in hand posture straight. He never called them, Sir Elise said, pouring tea. Said names were free, and he'd already earned his. He'd have liked you, she added. Malik smiled. Not because I said no to a deal, I hope. No, she said, because you knew when to stand. They spoke for just under an hour. No cameras, no hashtags. When Malik left, she handed him a copy of the photo. For when things get loud again, she said. He carried it with him the next day, when the next storm arrived. A leak, strategic, unmistakably Rothschild, hit major outlets. Documents suggested Malik had once violated early partnership clauses in a 2020 deal with Stratus Line Logistics. The implication was clear: he had a pattern of walking away from contracts when it suited him. But the same afternoon, Leonard Greer, CEO of Stratus, went on record. Malik walked away from our deal because we refused to increase pay for warehouse drivers. I wish I'd followed his lead. That's on me, not him. The blowback was immediate, and not for Malik. Public opinion began shifting harder. Rothschild wasn't just losing the narrative, they were exposing themselves as the kind of power that never thought it would have to explain itself. Now, it was explaining everything. Even inside the Rothschild estate, tensions were mounting. Malik heard through a quiet contact that Veronica's oldest son Matthew had challenged her for the first time in years. You cost us the merger, he'd reportedly said. And I won't apologize, she replied. But apologies wouldn't save them now. Not with companies pulling partnerships. Not with podcasts quoting Ruth Evans like gospel. Not with social feeds full of young entrepreneurs saying legacy means knowing when to leave the table. Malik didn't smile when he read those posts. He felt the weight of them. Symbols are heavy, and now he was one whether he liked it or not. Malik understood the weight now, not just of leadership, but of representation. His face, his voice, his choice had become a rallying cry for people who had never imagined they'd see someone walk away from power without apology. But every cheer, every quote, every repost added another layer to the burden. He hadn't asked to be a symbol. He had only wanted to protect his mother's dignity. Now the world expected him to lead something much larger. In the days that followed, Olivia worked around the clock. She coordinated with former interns, current warehouse workers, even suppliers. They weren't creating a media campaign. They were crafting a story rooted in truth. Malik didn't want PR fluff. He wanted people to speak honestly about what his leadership had meant. One video featured a South Route delivery driver who said, "When my daughter got sick, Malik gave me paid time off and sent groceries to my house. No cameras, just kindness." Another came from a junior analyst who recounted how Malik personally reviewed her project slides after hours before her first big client pitch. No one even knew, but he stayed and helped. That was 5 years ago. But it wasn't the testimonials that hit hardest. It was Ruth again. This time, she sat beside Malik in a quiet corner of the South Route office, the same way she used to sit beside him at the kitchen table when he studied spreadsheets late at night during the company's early days. The video was filmed on a phone. No crew, no lights. "I told my son to live right, not live rich," Ruth said. "And now people keep asking me if he made the right decision. Let me say this, some money comes with chains. And I didn't raise a boy to wear chains." That clip traveled even faster than the first one. Olivia watched the metrics spike. "They're not just listening," she said, turning to Malik. "They're believing." But not everyone was cheering. South Route's largest creditor began to hesitate. A bank they'd worked with since Series A funding paused its next line of credit. Some board members were rattled. Lionel voiced concerns again. "We need stability, Malik," he said in a closed-door meeting. "We're expanding West Coast operations, but our financing just froze. You understand what that means, I do." And Lionel asked, "I'd rather stand short-stacked than stand for nothing." Lionel groaned, rubbing his temples. "We're not running a revolution. We're running logistics." Malik looked him dead in the eye. "We're doing both. And if we do it right, we'll prove they're not mutually exclusive." Outside the boardroom, something else was brewing. Journalists started comparing Malik to civil rights icons, not for marching or legislation, but for one unshakable act of refusal. Podcasts titled "Episodes the CEO Who Said No" and "Respect Over Revenue." College business ethics courses began assigning the Evans-Rothschild fallout as a case study. It was surreal. Then, the call came from the Office of Business and Labor Reform in Washington. They were assembling a national panel on ethical business leadership. They wanted Malik to co-chair. "I'm not a policy guy," he told Olivia. "You're the guy who made a billion-dollar choice based on principles," she replied. "That's more than most politicians ever do." After a long pause, Malik nodded. "Fine. I'll sit on it, but I don't want it to distract from what we're building here." Which brought him to his next decision, something deeply personal. He called an emergency staff meeting and stood before the entire team in the South Route warehouse. No stage, no mic, just him. "I walked away from that deal," he said, "not for headlines. I did it because I wouldn't build a future on silence. But we don't stop here. We build something better. Real systems. Real support." Then, he outlined the launch of the Ruth Initiative, a new foundation under South Route's umbrella. Its purpose: provide childcare for warehouse workers, fund health screenings for truck drivers, offer tuition stipends to the children of frontline staff. "This isn't charity," he said. "It's infrastructure for the people who make everything else possible." The room erupted in applause. It wasn't loud. It was deep. Felt. Olivia caught a glimpse of Ruth, standing in the back, wiping her eye, though she'd never admit it. Later that week, Malik held the company's first-ever family day, an idea Olivia called corporate redefinition. But Malik called it something else, a reunion. Food trucks lined the parking lot. There were bounce houses for the kids, book giveaways, free vision screenings, even a booth for resume help. Drivers, warehouse crews, interns, everyone came. There were no name tags, no titles, just people and paper plates and stories. Midway through the event, Malik took the mic not for a speech, but a statement. "People said I was crazy to turn down $900 million. But this right here," he gestured to the crowd. "This is worth more than any check." The reaction was quiet, warm. A standing ovation would have felt fake. What he got instead was better nods, claps, teary smiles, and one little girl in a tutu who ran up to hug his leg. That night, as the tent lights dimmed and the lot emptied out, Malik sat with Ruth, under the last white canopy still standing. "You sure you want to carry all this weight?" she asked. "I'm not carrying it alone," he replied. "You helped build this." She smiled, reaching into her bag and pulling out a folded paper. "Found this old photo you left in my garage." It was one of Malik, age 14, standing beside the first delivery van they bought together at auction. He remembered that day, like it was yesterday, her cheering as the engine sputtered to life. "Legacy," she said, "isn't something you leave behind. It's something you live through." He nodded, tucking the photo into his pocket, the way he had with Elise's picture of her father. But peace wouldn't last long. 2 days later, Malik's assistant handed him an envelope. No return address. Thin paper. Inside a single line typed in courier font. "You made your move. Now we'll make ours." It wasn't signed. But Malik didn't need a name. He knew exactly where it came from, and exactly what it meant. The message in the envelope sat on Malik's desk, like a loaded weapon. No signature. No threat spelled out. Just one sentence, but it rang louder than any press conference. "You made your move. Now we'll make ours." He didn't need handwriting analysis to know it came from someone connected to the Rothschild machine. They weren't just bruised, they were wounded. And wounded dynasties don't sulk. They retaliate. Malik didn't flinch. Not externally. But Olivia noticed the stiffness in his shoulders during their next meeting. "They won't stop with whispers," she said. "They're going to start flipping the story." "They already are," Jared added. "There's an article being shopped around right now. One of their PR firms is pitching it to outlets. It paints you as a reckless CEO who used outrage for attention." Olivia turned her laptop around to show a draft headline. "Visionary, or volatile, the cost of principle in an age of optics." "They're trying to define you," she said. Malik leaned back in his chair. "Then we define ourselves louder." He didn't mean with louder words. He meant action. The Ruth Initiative rolled out 2 weeks ahead of schedule. Partnerships were locked with 3 community nonprofits. Childcare stipends began reaching families. A mobile medical unit launched its first health screening in the Bronx for South Route's night shift drivers. Photos of Ruth attending the launch surfaced. No press invite, just a driver's daughter who posted, "Miss Ruth hugged me like I was her own." We need more CEOs raised like this. And quietly, something shifted in the business world. A West Coast firm, Brisk Freight, reached out. Then 2 others. Logistics companies that once looked to Rothschilds for capital were now looking to Malik for leadership. Not in public yet, but in quiet meetings, quiet investments. The idea of a company with ethics that didn't collapse under profit pressure was catching fire in spaces no one expected. Still, not everyone was thrilled. One afternoon, Lionel walked into Malik's office and tossed a folder on the table. "This is the blowback," he said. "Our Chicago lender wants to dissolve the line of credit. They say we're too high risk, not financially, reputationally." Malik thumbed through the document, then closed it. "Let them walk." "You say that like we don't need that line," Lionel snapped. "You think your mother's quotes and banana bread are enough to run nationwide expansion? I think people want to believe in something, and we're giving them a reason. But belief won't cover payroll." "We're not out of cash," Malik replied evenly. "We're out of patience for bullshit dressed as tradition." Lionel stared, then slowly sank into a chair. "You really think this is sustainable?" "I think Malik said that if we build it right, it'll be unstoppable." The two sat in silence for a while, and Malik didn't miss the way Lionel's expression softened just slightly. That weekend, Malik returned to Newark to visit Ruth. They ate on the porch, fried catfish, and collard greens the way she liked it. As she cleared dishes, he asked, "You all right with all this attention?" Ruth didn't answer right away. Then she set down the plate and turned. "Baby, they never liked it when we left rooms with our heads high. Makes them feel small. So they try to make us feel smaller. They're still spinning it, like I blew everything up for nothing," Malik said. She nodded. "Because they don't know the cost of respect. But we do." That line echoed in his head for days. Then, another unexpected message came through. This one wasn't typed. It wasn't anonymous. It was a voicemail. Malik, hey, it's Reggie. Yeah, your uncle. He stopped in his tracks. That name hadn't crossed his ears in over 20 years. Reggie, his father's brother, had vanished after the funeral. No calls, no birthdays, no explanation. Malik had been 13. I saw what you did. With the deal. With your mom. I had to say something. I'm proud of you. I'm sorry for a lot, but mostly for not being there when you needed me. Then silence. Malik sat with it. A part of him wanted to delete it. Another part, buried deeper, wanted to reply. Later that night, he called Ruth. You hear from Reggie? He asked without preamble. I did, she said. Left me a message yesterday. Same as you, I'm guessing. What does he want? Maybe nothing. Maybe peace. I don't know if I need peace with him, Malik murmured. Ruth paused, then said, Sometimes peace ain't for them. It's for you. That line landed heavier than he expected. The next evening, Malik called Reggie back. 3 rings, then a click. Malik. The voice was cautious, fragile. It's me. You sound just like your dad. They spoke for 20 minutes. Not about the absence. Not about the years. But about Malik's football days, about the van his dad bought, about Reggie, watching Malik's press conference online from a bar in Atlanta. When they hung up, Malik didn't feel closure, but he felt a little lighter. The next day at the office, he shared the experience during a team check-in. Not the personal part, just the lesson. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means refusing to carry someone else's failure any longer. That resonated with people more than any Q3 update. But the real surprise came after. As Malik exited the meeting, a young intern caught up to him in the hallway. Mr. Evans, she said out of breath. I just wanted to thank you. My dad always told me business was about swallowing pride and chasing money. But you proved him wrong. Malik paused, smiled. No, he said gently. My mother did. The intern's words lingered in Malik's mind, long after she walked away. You proved him wrong. But he hadn't done it alone. His mother's strength, her patience, her refusal to lower her dignity, through decades of quiet resilience, she had laid the foundation. He was just finally building on it in public in real time. And now, more than ever, he understood that everything he did was being watched, measured, interpreted, resisted, imitated. Later that evening, he returned home to his apartment in Jersey City, a modest place by CEO standards, open plan minimal, with large windows overlooking the Hudson. He poured a glass of water, kicked off his shoes, and sat down at the kitchen counter. Across from him sat an unopened envelope, one that had arrived that afternoon, wedged between vendor invoices and nonprofit paperwork. Thin, cream-colored. No return address. Only his name typed in clean black letters. He opened it, absent-mindedly. Inside was a short handwritten letter, in tight cursive, Mr. Evans. You don't know me, but I know who you are. My father worked for the Rothschild estate for over 20 years, as a groundskeeper. He never got a thank you, but he took pride in what he did. He taught me to stand tall, even when invisible. I saw your story. I cried. Not because I was shocked, but because someone finally said no, and meant it. You reminded me of my father. Thank you. With deep respect, Camille Pierce. Malik read it twice. Then again. The name stirred something. He opened his laptop and searched her name. Nothing obvious. No LinkedIn. No press hits. Just a school district website in Harrisburg listing a Camille Pierce, 4th grade teacher. That was her. The next morning, he handed the letter to Olivia. Can you find her? Olivia blinked. You want a call scheduled? No. I want to knock on her door. It took 48 hours. On Saturday morning, Malik stood on a small stoop in Harrisburg, holding a paper bag of fresh muffins and a container of cold brew. His driver waited discreetly down the block. He knocked twice. The door opened to a woman in her mid-40s, brown ponytail. No makeup, wearing a faded school sweatshirt. Her face froze. You're Malik, he said, offering a small smile. And this is breakfast. I figured you probably get a lot of people wanting things. I just wanted to say thank you." Camille stared at him, then let out a quiet, breathy laugh. "Come in. Before my dog barks the roof off." Inside was cozy lived-in. A throw blanket draped over a sofa. Family photos lined the mantel. On the far end sat a black and white image of an older man standing beneath a tall oak tree rake, in hand pride in his eyes. "My father," she said, noticing his gaze. "That's the backyard of the Rothschild estate. He used to say, 'They own the land, but I keep it alive.' He sounds like the kind of man I'd want on my team." They sat over coffee and spoke for nearly an hour. Camille told stories of watching her father rise before dawn, never late, never loud. How he refused to bow or call anyone sir who didn't earn it. How he once got reprimanded for entering the front door instead of the service gate. "He said doors weren't made for status," she said. "They were made to open." Before Malik left, she handed him a photo, another one of her father, this time sitting under the oak eating lunch off a folded napkin. "For when things get loud again." He nodded, tucked it into his jacket pocket, and left. Back in Newark, Ruth listened carefully as Malik recounted the visit. She said, "I reminded her of him," he finished. Ruth nodded. "Funny how truth finds you. Doesn't matter the road, it always gets there." Malik smiled, but the moment didn't last long. The following Monday, Malik's phone rang just as he entered the South Route office. It was from a number tagged as private caller. He hesitated, then answered. "Mr. Evans," a woman's voice said gently. "This is Nurse Patel from Capital Care Medical in Trenton. Your mother experienced a brief fainting spell during her church study group. She's okay now, but we admitted her just to be safe." Malik didn't say a word. He was already grabbing his keys and heading for the door. When he arrived, Ruth was sitting upright in a hospital bed sipping ginger ale and scowling like someone had canceled her plans. "I told them I stood up too fast," she said as he entered. "Didn't need all this fuss." "You scared people," Malik said quietly, sitting beside her. "They overreacted. You're still shaking." "I'm 68, she said. "Everything shakes." Later, a doctor entered, a woman in her 30s, composed kind. She explained that Ruth's vitals were stable, but that there were minor concerns: arrhythmia, iron deficiency, and a leaky valve. Nothing critical, but nothing to ignore either. After the doctor left, Ruth and Malik sat together watching reruns of Sanford and Son on the room's tiny TV. The laugh track buzzed, but Malik barely heard it. "You've done good, baby," Ruth said suddenly, not looking away from the screen. He chuckled. "Did you just call me baby? In front of the nurse I brought you into this world? I can call you anything I like." He smiled, but it didn't fully reach his eyes. "I'm not done yet." "I know," she said. "But don't wait too long to live." That hit him differently. Back at the office, the message kept echoing. Don't wait too long to live. He pulled out the whiteboard in the corner of his office and started sketching. Not a marketing funnel, not a financial projection, but a new plan for the Ruth Initiative Phase 2. This time, it wasn't just a charity fund. It was a system. Real change. Tuition stipends for warehouse families. Mobile health screenings at every distribution hub. Emergency grants for drivers. Legal support for workers dealing with housing disputes. Internal pathways from hourly labor to executive internships. That afternoon, he called Olivia and Lionel into the room. "I want to build this out now, and I want to name it properly. Not a project, a foundation." Olivia looked intrigued. Lionel looked surprised. Malik continued, "I want to name it after her. Ruth deserves more than a shout-out. She deserves legacy, and not the kind written in press releases." A week later, the announcement went public. The Ruth Evans Foundation. No celebrity endorsements, no red carpet. Just a short video of Ruth planting tulips in her front yard, and Malik's voice narrating over it, "Respect starts at home. We just decided to build the house bigger." That night, media outlets praised it. Union leaders called. 3 more firms in supply chain tech expressed interest in partnership. But Malik didn't celebrate. He sat alone in his apartment, looking at Camille's father in the photo, thinking about how far respect had traveled just to find a place to rest, and how many people still had none. Then came the alert on his phone. A scheduled White House advisory panel had added a new name to its Ethics and Commerce Council. His. Malik stared at the screen for a long time. Not because he was proud, but because for the first time in months, he didn't feel like he was reacting. He felt like he was becoming. The White House email sat open on Malik's screen long after the initial adrenaline had passed. We are honored to invite Mr. Malik Evans to co-chair the National Council on Ethical Business Practices. It was official. No rumor, no speculation. The government wanted him to help shape the future of American commerce. He'd once dreamed of building the biggest logistics company in the country. Now, they were asking him to help build something much bigger: rules, standards, values. He didn't reply right away. He just sat in the quiet of his office, the city glowing outside the windows, Camille's father's photo resting beneath his monitor. Legacy wasn't just what you left behind. It was what followed you while you were still breathing. The next morning, he walked into the South Route boardroom with more clarity than he'd had in weeks. Olivia, Lionel, and Jared were already there. This time, no tension. No raised voices. Just coffee cups, open folders, and something new: steadiness. We've stabilized, Jared said. Cash flow's healthy, and the numbers from the new contracts are outperforming projections. More than that, Olivia added, turning her laptop toward Malik, the story's helping us. Not hurting. Investors who left are quietly asking to come back, and 3 mid-sized logistics firms want to partner with you, personally leading strategy. Malik nodded, still processing. Lionel leaned forward. You were right, he said finally. People are starting to believe. Malik didn't smile. He just exhaled, slowly. It's not belief I want, he said. It's change. He stood, walked to the whiteboard again, and began writing. Not just next steps, but the next model. A full blueprint for how South Route would operate going forward. Profit sharing for long-tenured employees, mandatory leadership rotations from corporate to field work, expanded mental health resources, direct feedback loops between drivers and board-level meetings. He circled the word at the top: scalable integrity. Then he turned to them. We're not chasing redemption anymore. We're building something that doesn't need it. As they nodded, Olivia raised one point. Media wants another event. A big one. National reach, not press. Malik said. People. So, another family day number bigger, not just South Route. He paused, thinking. Something public. Something honest. She tilted her head. Like a community summit. He looked at her. Like a family reunion. For everyone who's ever been made to feel like they were the help instead of the heart. Planning started that week. Malik insisted it wouldn't be a conference too stiff. It would be a celebration. Free food trucks, open mics, resource booths, financial coaching, healthcare services, childcare signups, all in one place. They called it the Belonging Day. Ruth arrived early the morning of the event, dressed in soft lavender and a wide-brimmed sun hat. She refused VIP seating. Instead, she spent the day walking with families, hugging kids, talking to veterans who'd retrained into warehouse jobs. She even joined a group photo with volunteers from the literacy tent. Malik stood by the main stage as music played low in the background. Hundreds of people filled the outdoor venue: former interns, logistics workers, policy advocates, high school students, parents with strollers, even rival CEOs who had come quietly to observe. When he stepped up to speak, the crowd didn't hush the way press rooms do. It stayed alive, human, real. I turned down $900 million, Malik said, and people told me I was crazy. But I didn't walk away from money. I walked towards something better. He paused, scanning the crowd. This is what better looks like. Everyone gets a plate. Everyone gets a place. The applause wasn't thunderous. It was warm, sustained, from the people who mattered most. That night, as twilight softened the skyline, Malik sat at a folding table with Ruth under a tent of string lights. Kids ran barefoot across the lawn. Someone handed out lemonade. A band played an acoustic set. "You did good," baby Ruth said quietly. He looked at her. Really looked. "So did you." But peace never comes without echoes. The following week, Malik returned to his office to find a voicemail on his desk phone, a line he rarely used anymore. One blinking light. No name. Just a number. He hit play. "Malik, it's Dwayne." The voice was older now. Slower. But unmistakable. "I wasn't sure if you'd still have this number, but I saw everything. The press, the foundation, the speeches. And your mother, Lord Ruth, looks the same. I just had to say, I'm proud of you. And I'm sorry. For everything. If you ever want to talk, this is my number." Then, silence. Dwayne. His father's brother. The man who vanished after the funeral and never came back. The one who said, "I got you," and disappeared. No calls on birthdays, no letters, no reasons. Malik stood there staring at the blinking light, then at the phone screen, then out the window. That night he couldn't sleep. Memories came fast. His father fixing a broken cabinet with duct tape. Dwayne tossing Malik a football in the yard. Then nothing. Silence. The kind that wounds deeper than noise. He called Ruth the next morning. "I heard from Dwayne," she said before he even said hello. "He called you too. Left a message. Same as yours. What do you think he wants? Maybe peace. Maybe nothing. I'm not sure I need peace with him." She was quiet for a moment, then said softly, "Sometimes baby peace ain't for them. It's for you." Malik held that line like a weight in his chest. That evening he dialed the number. 3 rings. A click. "Malik," the voice said, hopeful, cautious. "Yeah, it's me." A pause. "You sound just like your father." "I get that a lot." They didn't talk about absence or pain. They talked about Malik's high school days, about Dwayne watching the press conferences from a worn-out couch, about what it meant to disappear because you were too ashamed to stay. "I didn't leave because I stopped caring," Dwayne said. "I left because I thought I already failed." Malik didn't respond for a while. "I didn't need you to succeed," he finally said. "I just needed you to show up." Dwayne's voice cracked. I know I let you down." They didn't resolve everything. But when the call ended, Malik felt lighter. Later that week at an executive retreat, he shared a piece of the experience with his team. Forgiveness isn't approval, he told them. It's just refusing to let bitterness be the loudest thing in your life. Some nodded. Others stayed quiet. But one thing was clear: they weren't just following a CEO anymore. They were following a man who'd walked through fire and refused to burn bitter. As Malik left the retreat that evening, a junior associate caught up to him in the parking lot. "Mr. Evans," she said breathlessly, "I wanted to tell you. My dad used to say people in business never mean what they say, that it's all numbers and noise. But you proved him wrong." Malik smiled gently. "No," he said, "my mother did." And for the first time in months, as he turned the key in his car and looked at the path ahead, Malik didn't feel like he was recovering from something. He felt like he was building something no storm could break.